Hi, everybody. I'm Idan Tobias. I'm very happy to be here. I just want to make sure that you all can hear me. So it will be great if a few of you can just say something in the chat so that you can hear me, say how you're doing. Once we are getting this clear, we can start. Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for joining the session today. I'm super happy to be here as part of the HR, the new normal. It will be very nice to see a bit who is attending the meeting. So if you don't mind, just to write a few words about yourself, where you're coming from, maybe what is your role. Let's see who is joining us so far. Hey Anush, I'm happy to see that you're here as well. Happy to see that you can also hear me. Great. We'll wait just one more minute. Okay, cool. So let me start by sharing the presentation with you today. The topic that I decided to share with you today called Design for Disruption. And I hope that by the end of the session, you will understand what I meant when I started to design the session for you all. So let's get going. I'm going to share my screen. Hey, Rita. Thank you very much. I'm also grateful for you being here. Welcome from Kuala Lumpur. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so design for disruption. Before I start, I do want to encourage you to use the chat tab to ask any questions that you have in the meantime as I go through the presentation. You probably heard it for a long, like for many times already, but it will be great to see your feedback and to hear anything that comes to your mind throughout the presentation. I will try to make it within 30 minutes to share with you everything that I prepared for you, and after that we can have a Q&A session as it was planned. And I will make sure to look in and to reply to all of your questions. So thank you very much, and let's get going. So the first thing is that I want to share with you a bit about myself. So I'm Idan. I'm an industrial engineer by education. I'm coming originally from Israel, but I live today in Berlin, Germany. Back in Israel, I started, let's say, my first interaction with HR in a company called Teva. Teva is a big pharmaceutical company and have almost 60,000 employees. In Teva, I had the opportunity to lead the HR digital transformation, system implementations, and rollout across the world, and also rolling out a new operating model that we shared with the team. It was a very interesting process to be part of and to take a leading part of, which also was in a very specific environment. Teva is a multinational pharmaceutical. You can imagine that this is like a 114 years old company, very diverse, very international, very robust in compliance and everything that you can think about in this matter. After Teva, I had the opportunity to work in a small startup called Resource for Humans. This is the second logo that you can see here, where we work together to develop new age kind of HR technologies and perceptions. Resource for Humans is focused mainly on decentralized organization and really on the edge of everything that we can think about in this world of HR. Very innovative, a very, very small company as well, around 12 people at the time that I was there. I think now they are a bit bigger. And today I'm part of N26. N26 is a mobile digital bank, one of the fastest growing fintech companies in Europe and in the world in general. I joined N26 to lead as a project manager the build of basically the HR technology or the people's team technology for the whole company. Today, I'm leading a team called Digital Employee Experience that is supporting projects and programs related to digital infrastructure for the people organization, and going beyond that to more standardized approaches and changing the way we work and adapting to the environment. The reason for me to share with you that is that actually throughout my journey, I had the opportunity to experience different organizations coming from a more hierarchical, traditional organization like Teva, going to a very a young and vibrant startup like Resourceful Human, and today working in a company that in the last 1.5 years basically quadrupled itself in size and scope and number of customers, experiencing this stage of hyper growth together. And what I'm going to share with you today is actually my experience going from all of those companies and different environments that I can share with you. Another element that I can share with you that actually was a big part of my career so far is basically the concept of disruption. So in Teva, we had experienced disruption coming from the market, coming from technology, coming for changes in the environment, as you can imagine. And maybe some of you are working in companies that are more traditional and are reinventing themselves. So this is a corporate transformation that needs to happen to adapt to the current environment. Within Resourceful Human, the disruption came from within. So the concepts itself that we worked on are very disruptive to the current state of mind around organizations. And of course, N26 itself, a company that grows so fast to the extent that it is today, around 1,500 employees, just around 1.5 years ago, we're talking about a company which is around 400, 500 employees. So you can imagine what tremendous disruption this can happen. And also N26 itself, we are a disruptor in the fintech ecosystem and in the banking industry, financial services industry, and we are working to build our infrastructures actually to enable us to further disrupt and rethink what financial means for every person. How can we actually enhance the life of people with finance? N26 is also one of the biggest unicorns in Europe today, and we're keeping growing to this dimension. So it's also a very different environment that you can imagine from Teva. Just to get clear, I want to put a definition for the word disruption that we probably use quite some during this presentation. So according to Cambridge Dictionary, disruption is the action of preventing something, especially a system, process, or event, for continuing as usual or as expected. Of course, you can imagine that you experience different types of disruptions around your life, but the concept itself of disruption is not new. It's something that we experience as society, we experience as companies and individuals throughout our lives. But what I want to emphasize now is that actually disruption is becoming the new normal. Of course, the latest disruption that we are experiencing is the disruption of COVID-19, but actually it's coming with a line of ongoing disruptions that we experienced in the industry and continue to experience. I won't specify here every point that I mentioned, but you can see that actually we see an acceleration of the number of elements that are creating disruption in our life and in the way we do things. So this is a point that I want you to keep in mind. One thing that is very common to all of those disruptions is that all of those are representing what we call exponential behaviors or exponential phenomena. Exponential behaviors or phenomena, probably from the discussions about COVID-19, you are pretty familiar with it already, or from other experiences that you had. Exponential behavior is something that actually accelerates the level of change as it goes. So it's not only increasing in size, but it's also increasing the rate of change itself. Just to give you some examples of that, this is something that we're experiencing at different aspects of our life. And I just want to mention a few trends that exist in our world today. The first thing is, for example, an urbanization trend, right? You can see here that an exponential change means actually that, just one second, exponential change means that actually nothing happens for quite some time. Okay, we'll just, yeah, nothing happened for quite some time. It seems that everything is normal until basically the middle of the 2000s. And then all of a sudden you see this huge jump and change that occurs in multiple areas across the world around urbanization. We can say the same thing about the way we created value in the world. So basically in the last 50 years, we created more value than human society created across history. It is also an exponential phenomena for a person in the 19th century to think about the level of wealth that we have today in the organization is quite astonishing. It's something that they cannot even perceive. The argue is that this trend that we see here is actually, it's not stopping to accelerate at the moment. And even with the crisis of COVID-19, we can still see that the general trajectory of GDP growth and wealth creation is still on track for exponential growth. And of course, finally, we can see exponential behavior with the accumulated cases of COVID-19. I just picked Italy here, but of course, it's relevant to every case in every country that we actually experience. And the thing about exponential behaviors, again, it's things that it's very hard to anticipate when you are starting to get them or when you are in a specific point on the curve of what is coming next. And the difference between COVID-19 to the other exponential experiences that I share with you is that we had now an opportunity. It's, of course, we better learn it in other ways, but this was something that we all experienced together of an exponential change, not within years or decades, but an exponential change within weeks and days and months that actually disrupt our ways of life very quick. What I want to emphasize here is that there is something to learn from that. There is something to learn from experiencing this rate of change because we're going to experience in it in many other aspects of our lives going forward. And just to also speak about the human experience in this sense. So for us to be able to expect what is coming in an exponential phenomena, it's something that is almost unperceived. So even if you're an expert in your area, and even if you had a long time or many years of experience in a specific around a specific topic, and you're actually working within an environment that change in an exponential rate as we do, it's very hard to anticipate what is coming next. And it's very hard to anticipate how different the world will be in such a short period of time and what will be the time scale that we are speaking about. Of course, this is something that we can of course speak about this guy here, that even during the beginning of the pandemic, and we can argue of what is the opinion now, but the beginning of the pandemic, it was very hard to perceive that actually it's not going to go away, right? So although this is something that of course can be prevented, we can argue that it's literally hard to understand what's going to happen next. And also, Donald here is not the first person to make this mistake. When it comes to technology, the person that you can see here is Charles H. Dowell, who was the commissioner for US patents in 1899, and he claimed that there is nothing else to invent at the time. Of course, today we know there's much more to invent, and we know that the progress around technology and patents and discoveries that we have is only accelerating, which is probably very different and very hard to understand how far can we go when he was in his position. Of course, this is a trap that we can all be in And this is what I'm trying to emphasize here. Basically, the ability for us to imagine the future is becoming very, very hard. The ability to predict the trends that we're going to experience are very, very hard. Today, we are speaking, when it comes to technology, about the impact of AI and machine learning and robotics and all of those kind of things. It's still, when it comes to exponential changes we have with technology or patterns, it's something that I guess even the wildest imagination that we have probably is not even close to what we are getting ourselves into very soon. So it's very important to think about it as we go. Okay, so if we are now in this disruptive environment, exponential changes, what can we actually do about it? What does it mean for us as leaders, as HR people, or just humans that are trying to understand how to work and how to create value and how to make sure that we are well during this time? And this is what I want to focus with you in the next couple of minutes. The way for me to look at that is basically to break down the topic to two different aspects. One, it's around social and organizational aspect. It's how we organize ourselves, what are the rules of the game that we are creating, what are the behaviors that we are experiencing in order to deal with this situation and to deal with this environment and creating resilience. And another aspect is how do we look at the technology and the tools that we have in order to ensure that we can adapt and that we can actually build a landscape of tools and a toolbox that will be meaningful to deal with this type of environment. So let's start. When it comes to behavior, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about building adaptability and resilience, from my personal experience, is really that a lot of it is around building trust. I think trust is something that is so fundamental for us to be able to deal with change. Because when everything changes around us, we look around the people that we are collaborating with, that we are working with, and that are part of our social cycles for help, and we're looking for them to try and to find solutions together. And the argument that I want to present here is that creating trust, which means that you do what you say and you say what you do, starts with care. And actually, COVID-19 present us an unprecedented opportunity to change course and put care and the well-being of our people in the top of our head. It's a disease, it's a change that everybody experiences. It's very human for us to understand the experience of the other person when we ourselves experience the same crisis. Of course, in life and when you're interacting with your team members, this can be very different because different people experience different things. But this lesson that we can learn now about the importance of care should stay with us even after the pandemic is over, and be part of the toolkit that we have in order to sustain our businesses, organization, and get things done in this ever-changing environment. One of the first things that I did with my team when the pandemic hit is really put a lot of emphasis about care and changing the way we conducted our one-on-one meetings. Just one thing that you will see around this presentation is that I built it basically around a set of tips that you can see here that are marked with stars, just to make sure that I'm providing some pragmatic solutions and sharing things that I myself implemented or trying to implement in order to respond to the changes that we are facing. So one of the first things that I did is really changing the concept of how we conduct one-on-one meetings to focus only on the well-being of the people. Of course, we speak about the development, speak about the personal development of the people, but everything is around their well-being and what they need in order to be at their best. Having said that, of course, we still discuss work and we discuss how we get things done, but not in those one-on-one. Creating a separation between let's say, the operational work that we need to do and the things that we need in order to achieve practical tasks, to how you as a person, how the team is feeling, and what do they struggle with personally, and trying to do whatever we can do in order to support them. I think has been a big part of building the resilience in the team, especially when it comes with true care and true meaning of discussion towards their well-being. So this is one of the first argument here. Another thing is that in order to create trust and in order to really make sure that you are taking care to the next level, I will encourage you to think about seizing opportunities to act with care towards your environment. Of course, when a person come with you with an issue, or come with you with a personal matter, or just mention something that affects their environment, each and every one of us can have different reactions to that. But as leaders, as HR, I think it's really, really important to make sure that you seize this opportunity actually to help and show that you can act with care for the people. I can share with you that one of the most, let's say, meaningful experiences that I had as an employee interacting with the leader was back in Teva, when I got full support from one of my direct managers around the case of discrimination that I faced. This had such a big impact on my ability actually to act in this environment, and ability to keep on and creating value, and of course created a huge amount of trust and a huge amount of engagement for me to the team and to the organization at the time. So those tools are really, really powerful when you mean it and when you do it in the right time. But in order to be able to do it, and in order to be able to identify those moments, it's really important to have this mindset of the importance of this thing, and seeking those opportunities to help and reach out and make sure that you are acting actively to improve the well-being of the teams that you are working with. It doesn't have to be for your subordinates, it doesn't have to be for your managers, it can be for your colleagues and organization, as every time you're creating more trust, you're actually increasing your ability to adapt, you're increasing the human connection that you're creating, which eventually allow you to get things done and get them done in a way that strengthen the team. Another aspect of how we organize ourselves that I want to emphasize here is driving decision making, and making sure that when we are making decisions as leaders and as people that own a project, owning a product, it doesn't matter, we're thinking about it in a way that actually increase adoption and not the other way around. So of course you're working, I guess, with different frameworks. Maybe you implemented some, maybe you are on your way to do that, or just learning about that. But there are many of those, and most of those are great for different scenarios, such as Agile, Scrum, the Spotify model. It doesn't matter which one of them you choose to go with. But one thing that you can think about that actually connects all of them together is the fact that they are trying all to structure the decentralization of ownership. So if you think about, for example, the Spotify model, right? So in the Spotify model, they are trying really to put the ability for team to make decisions, but they still need to align between teams and within their squads to make sure they have alignment on the strategy and adapt to that as they go. So every concept here is actually playing with structure and ownership, decentralization, which is a big concept in general agile methodologies. But what I want to argue here is that in order to get to the point that those methodologies can work, it's important not only to implement the how you do that, but also to implement your own way of driving ownership while you are working in those framework. One of the ways that I always use with my team is really working through frameworks with them. So the way that I'm actually trying to achieve things is by building structures and working with questions, working with a lot of, let's say, guidance, but leaving a lot of open space other than the goal that we are trying to achieve for the team itself to create the content of how we're going to do that. And another thing to realize is that actually, if you want to drive ownership, you need, as a leader, really to pay attention to every time that you are intervene within a process. So intervene within a project or scope of your team. Of course, there is a place to intervene, to mitigate risk, or to share knowledge, but it is important to remember that in an exponential environment that experiences tremendous amount of change, you as an expert doesn't always have the answers, and maybe things that worked in the past, of course, they have value, experience have value. You can bring your point of view to the table, but it is a point of view in a world that changes exponentially because the future might look very different. Just as a reminder, you can remember this guy on the top there. He can be an expert, right? And all of a sudden he finds himself in a very different world. Another aspect that I want to share with you is the concept of designing with redundancy. Here you can apply it both to the organization aspects of things and the technology aspect of things, and I will elaborate a bit more about that. So when it comes to redundancy, it's the situation in which something is unnecessary because it is more than it's needed, just to make sure that we align on the definition. Now, I guess that as HR professionals, we all like, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about, right? We're talking so long about efficiency and cost reduction and always looking ourselves like in trying to get the most out of the resources that we are getting to the point that there is no more ways to clean around the processes that we are creating. Which is true, we do need to clean the processes. We do need to make sure we have efficiency in what we do. But we also need to make sure that we are actively designing redundancy, not the random redundancy that sometimes you have in processes and eliminate steps that are not needed, but to design with purpose redundancy to allow better resilience. And here I want to share with you a lesson from network theory. Basically, what you see here is kind of a concept of how the internet works, right? Or how any networks in the technological world is working in order to enable us to have resilient infrastructures. So if we will think about the scheme here that you see on the left side, this is basically the most efficient way to have an internet, okay? You have one server that connects to every other computer in the world, and you reduce the number of connections that you have. Everybody have their internet, and you can say, okay, we saved a lot of money. Looks like everything worked great. A resilient by redundancy structure actually create more connection than they needed. If you look on the right side, you can see that it's not only that the central point is connected, but also all the points around it are connected to each other. The case is that, of course, this is a bit more expensive to do that, or even sometimes much more expensive to do that. But when you're talking about a world that is changing constantly, you can expect that there will be issues coming and you will need to change, and you will need to be able to change as quick as you can and keep the business running. In order to do that, in the network theory, basically you're creating redundancy. You're creating those connections to allow problems to be solved in the same time that the system keeps on running. Taking it to the world of organizations, so the team structure that we are having, creating redundancy in scope of people and creating kind of shared responsibilities and shared knowledge around different topics in the organization, it's redundancy. It's making sure that people can cover in each other, can step into the topics of one another, both to have more clarity on what the other teams are doing, but also to, if needed, to be able to divert team members to a different topic. Basically moving from specialities to more generalist structure. Of course, here in the diagram that you see, this is very kind of a mixture, a very like extreme phase of that, where everybody is doing everything. Um, uh, but of course, it can be structured in different areas according to your specific needs. The most important thing is that people are sharing responsibility within the HR team, across the HR team, between HR and IT, between HR and other function unit, HR and managers, and designing it in a way that people can actually step in when needed very quickly, and not needed to go through an entire training or certification cycles in order to be able to train in. When it comes to the technology stack that you have, it's actually very important to create redundancy in the different functionalities that you have in order to allow more resilience. And let me explain what I mean in this sense. So the companies that you see here, nobody of them is like paying me or something like that, but it is well-known tools that probably some of you are using. In the past, those organizations and those tools used to be very specific to specific audiences. So the Workday, which is an HR application, you can put it SAP or Oracle, it doesn't matter, but it was for HR people. And ServiceNow was for the operation. Salesforce is something that customer service is using, and Office is just for presentations or video calls. But this is actually a very 2010 kind of perception. Today, those ecosystems are increasing in size, and you see as we go that more and more and more platforms like that and tools like that are actually creating a whole ecosystem around them. And they have a lot of overlapping parts of that. So Workday, ServiceNow, and Salesforce both can work with workflows and create service ticketing and stuff like that. Office also allow you to collaborate and create workflows like service. Wherever you go, you can see that the infrastructures are overlapping each other. But this also creates an opportunity to create better resilience. And as HR professionals, it's important to understand which platforms you have in your ecosystem, in your company, in your enterprise available for you. Because maybe another team is using it, but it hold a lot of value for your team, especially in times of crisis, especially when you need to create changes very quickly. If you are aware of the capabilities of different platforms in your organization, you can step into and utilize that to solve problems in your realm, and also support others in supporting their own issues as they go. Basically, what I'm asking you as HR professionals to consider is get comfortable with technology. Make sure that you bring technical skills closer to home. Involve tech and non-tech people in knowledge sharing, and making sure that you have the capability to jump between platforms. You understand the potential around them. Try to work a single team towards a solution. A lot of time you see the HR teams are jumping in to design a process or answer a question, and let the tech teams or IT teams or vendors to configure and change the systems as they go. The tools that you see here today are actually allow you to work differently, allow you as HR professionals to step in and take an active role in designing the processes and understand how those logical systems are working. It's not all the time possible. It depends exactly what change you are doing, but get yourself comfortable in being around the table and having those discussions, because technology is becoming the most important element of enabling us to do what we do. And also investigating discovery of your architecture in the organization. Actively search for what other teams are using and how their solution maybe can apply to your area. I can promise you, you will find opportunities very quickly after you start that. But having the discussion and having this mindset, it's very important, especially when you need to act fast. And the last tip that I have here is really about getting around the table for the architectural discussion from IT side. I'm saying that because the architectural design that will be defined in your organization will determine what you can and cannot do as an HR organization and HR professionals. What tools will you have in your disposal, which is critical in nowadays and critical to enable you to create change in scale. So getting comfortable to join those discussions and get yourself more familiar with the terminology around them will become very important very soon, if not already. And finally, I want to bring it all together. So basically, what I wanted to express here is that the rate of change is actually accelerating in many dimensions, not only from the COVID-19 aspect of things, but we can use it, this experience from learning how does it feel and what does it take actually to deal with exponential changes and exponential things. And an environment that is changing so frequently required us to create structure that are more resilient, which means that we need to design with the fact in mind that things are going to change quick. So you have the frameworks, you have the methodologies to do that, but allowing you to actually act upon those methodologies takes more than implementing them. It's a cultural change, it's a change in the infrastructures that you're using, etc. And just to summarize the point that we mentioned, in order to be able to build resilience and adaptability, I encourage you to work with building trust and starting with creating a space for care and the well-being of the teams. Make sure that you are paying attention to the way you make decisions and how you are intervening with the team's doings. And create smart redundancy with knowledge, scope, and tools to make sure that you have space to work and change and adapt the things that you do. Don't put efficiency as the main goal. Put adaptability as the main goal. And one of the tools is redundancy, designed redundancy. And the last part is really get comfortable to discuss technical topics, get comfortable to speak on architecture, and make sure that you're sharing the knowledge, your expertise with the technical team as well, to make sure that you're getting closer together, because the future is actually in between. It's not staying in one or the other. Thank you very much. This was me. And now I will be looking for your questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I will be happy to start the discussion. Great, thank you, Kowa. I hope I pronounce your name good. Yes, you wrote, great idea to link from engineering approach to HR. Well, I'm an engineer in HR, so I think for me it's something that I'm doing as I go. But I agree with you. Basically, I think you can go with it to both directions. You can take principles from engineering to work with HR, and you can also do the other way around. Also, what we see today is when you talk about the ability to engineer and to create solutions and bring technology to reality, you really need to understand the organization. You need to understand leadership. You need to understand how decision-making, managerial structures are working in order to create technology that matters, and also look upon to the future in this sense. So today, maybe we're working in a more hierarchical way, but tomorrow we will want to work more around teams and more with agility. So this is actually a lot of implications of what technology you need to use and what technology do you need in order to enable your team to create value. Cool. Hey, Anush, I see you. 15 years in HR, mainly L&D function. Thank you for that. If you have any questions or any topic that you want me to answer, please write it down. I will give you a few minutes to do that. Yes, Anush, I see the question. What's the biggest disruption in HR you are predicting in coming period? And is there any geographical specifics you observe? This is actually a very interesting question. I think the biggest disruption that I see within HR, and I want to maybe be specific about HR, it will be about the way we organize HR itself. And what I mean about that, I mean that the traditional structures that we see in HR, like it's supposed to be new, right? This HRBP concept and business partnering and all of this concept. It's not that old, but already we see that we need kind of to adjust those periods and those perceptions of how we work in HR. My personal perspective is that HR will kind of productize itself in a sense of building itself around of programs and projects that are disrupting the organization and less on the fixed structure that we see today, which supports specific functions and managers. HR is still very driven around the functional areas and still driven around the hierarchies in the organization. And since organizations themselves are changing and moving not totally away, but moving away for that, HR will need to develop other functions that actually can work and can support those let's say shaping organization, cross-functional teams. We still don't have a clear answer of how as HR do we support those things. And I think this is a major shift that need to happen within HR. Thank you, Koa, for your compliment. And Rita, you wrote like a proposal to encourage us to get comfortable with technical topics and to embrace new learning in order to get into such discussion. Any tips on how a non-tech techie can begin the process? Yes, get yourself involved in projects and initiatives that has a technical component to them. You probably already had some experience with that because it's coming all over the place. And get yourself to sit with the team that design the solutions, not the process, the solution itself in the tool itself, and get some hands-on experience, even if it's just the simplest thing of changing one process, changing one permission group, thinking about how the systems are connecting together. I think this will be a very good start from this perspective. Another recommendation is really just create a routine of knowledge sharing around specific topics and ask questions, not only on, okay, how do we allow something to, some process to be processed, but how actually did you do that? What is the logic around that? I think this is very interesting to get, and I think it's a good starting point. Yes, thank you, Anush. Totally sharing the productizing approach. Thank you very much for your question. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. I'm here for you. Yeah, in the meantime, I can share with you maybe a bit more about this concept of getting comfortable with tech. I think one of the progressions that we see today in people's career from the HR area is also going technical. So one of the things to think about, I don't know where you are in your career, but one of the things, whether you are a leader or whether you are starting your way in HR, is that actually understanding technology, both as an executive or as a person from the leadership team or a junior, it's actually very important because your decisions, if you are in a leadership position, in the future will be more and more and more dependent on your ability to execute the technology and understanding the potential of technology. So the incentive here actually to get yourself familiar with how those things work are enormous for personal growth and for career growth, and also for making sure you are still relevant in the market going forward. It's going to become very critical if it's not already. Yes, Anush, I see your question. And what's your opinion about different knowledge sharing automate solution? When you say knowledge sharing automate solution, can you give me an example by that? This will be great to see. Thank you, Dr. Atif. When you mean knowledge sharing, you mean like collaboration befriend technical people. Yes, please do. Yeah, and just understand that different people interact and communicate differently, and especially techie people. Sometimes we tend to be more introverts. As HR professionals, I think it makes sense that you will be able to go through that and create those meaningful connections eventually. Anush, when you say knowledge sharing, it will be good if you can elaborate what you mean about that, and then I can also reply. Especially when people teach each other and share knowledge within the organization. One thing that I want to share with you of my perception around that is that sometimes people are really putting like these boundaries of, oh, I need a tool to do that. I need something new, or going to Google and searching of how do you do knowledge sharing in the company. But I can say pretty sure that you probably do have something already in your ecosystem that can help you to do that. It can be an intranet infrastructure that you have. It can be whatever tool that you are using in order to communicate in the organization. Creating a video like you see at the moment with me sharing that today is super easy. You don't really need to have expensive infrastructure to do that. There are, of course, amazing platforms that allow you to create content and allow you to share it with teams. Workday have this application. You have it from SAP. You have other applications that are specifically speaking about that, like WebEx and other training online kind of platform. But knowledge sharing for me starts with creating a community. Yes, and this is exactly what I'm trying to emphasize, Anush, that those routines are actually routines of creating connections with the team. So it can be just that you have once a month, twice a month, a session when each team is sharing specific piece of knowledge that you have. You can do it online, you can record those things, and then you can share them. It doesn't need to have a technical infrastructure in order to allow it. It can be very simple, and just by having those interactions and having enough time to discuss, you will get a lot of value of that, both from creating the relationships that you need in order to get things moving, and also from the aspect of just having more understanding of the other's world. I think this is the most important thing. Hi, Anna. Your question is, what sources would you recommend or classes to take to get more information on the terminology, trends, and tools? So one of the, I think, most important areas, especially for HR, is data. And I will encourage you to have the simplest Coursera course that you can find around data modeling. So much of what we do in HR is depending of the way we structure our data. And so much around the tools that we're using in HR, it has to do with how data is being transferred or connected or translated between systems, and to the point that we can report on that. So just by searching for a simple course of data modeling and starting to get into this world, you will get a lot of value, and we'll be able to discuss further with the tech teams. Another topic that I want to encourage you to dig into is understanding logical thinking. Maybe it sounds very weird to say logical thinking, but logic is basically also part of computer science today, and how we design tools and technologies. It's basically a world of knowledge of how you design logics, like if, then, and or logic and stuff like that. There are some tools around that that you can have. So also understanding a bit more about logics in the mathematical or in computer science world, and just an intro to that will help you to also understand this world. And together with the data modeling aspect, you will have really good understanding of how things come together. And what I can also promise you is that in the future, those tools that you're seeing as tech tools today will become more and more and more accessible to HR professionals that understand data modeling and logic, because it's about the tools are becoming more drag and drop and becoming more easy to use and really speaking in a process kind of language, but you still need to have the logic and the data modeling in mind. I think we have just a few more minutes, so if you have any other questions, please send them. Okay. So thank you very much for all of your questions, and thank you for taking the time and being with me. I'm very happy to meet you all, and feel free to connect either through the chat here or through LinkedIn or whatever comes to your mind. Dr. Atif, this is a very interesting question. I think it really depends on what are you looking for and what are your specific needs. I cannot say that there is a tool in this area that is the best. I think there are many things that are popping up, especially in distributed workforce area. So it really depends on the best, but we can also discuss it further. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure to be with you all, and feel free to reach out. Ciao.